Um, Chat, I like desperately need to talk about The Last of Us. I seriously do. I'm not okay. Another slideshow. Class, welcome to class. Welcome to The Last of Us. Take a seat. No chairs. Welcome in, class. Hold on, I gotta do the whole look. Class, I don't have a yardstick. I have a banana. A very bruised banana. Why is it so brown? But like weirdly brown. I have no explanations for you. It's been sitting here for like most of the day. I haven't eaten it. It's very neglected at this point. No. You can go after class, Realms. We're learning. I'm gonna take time to show you the presentation I made for this because I actually have many thoughts and feelings that I want to express. For anybody who hasn't seen the show and is intending on seeing the show, spoiler alert, because we're going to be talking about some major plot points. And this episode was really rough. Anybody who's played the game or has not played the game, there's some serious triggering situations that happen in the episode. So trigger warning to anybody who may not want to see just a whole scale of things. Not that I have anything that is completely grotesque in my presentation. I actually tried hard not to, but it was still, you just feel rough watching the episode. So we're going to be talking about some pretty heavy topics. Trigger warning for anybody who maybe isn't wanting that. It's time to sit down, class, talk about just the full scale of what this episode was and how I feel about it, because there's a huge mixture of emotions that I feel like I was going through. And even when I was building out this presentation, there were things that were coming up that I didn't realize were so, that I felt so strongly about until I started building this presentation. I said in my trailer reaction that I thought shit was going to go down pretty early in the season because they only had a handful of episodes to go through, and I was right. Episode 2 is where shit really hits the fan, but the show went in a weird direction for like a few different things, and I don't fully understand why. I watched the episode, then I watched the game, and the segment of the story that went down in the episode, I watched that in gameplay. And then I actually went back and I rewatched the episode because I wanted to make sure that my thoughts weren't subjective to my own feelings of the show. I want to be as objective as I can when I'm doing these conversations with you guys, because I understand that the show is not just for the video game watchers, it's for the people who are watching the story for the first time. But there were some creative liberties that I didn't really understand why they took. So we'll talk about it. Okay. So beginning of the episode, there's a lot of kind of like in between scenes in the episode that are kind of just like character development that I'm not going to touch on too strongly in this conversation because I don't necessarily think that's the topic of discussion for this episode, but there are little moments. Although a lot of it comes down to the action. I think like 40 minutes is strictly the action of the story, and maybe 20 minutes is character development. Like specific character development, some like slow spots. But one thing I wanted to highlight was the beginning of the episode. There's a few scenes with Jesse and Ellie that I really liked that also show up in the game. So it kind of opens with Ellie talking about how she kissed Dina, and so Jesse confronts her, but it's kind of like he's playing it like he's just finding out for the first time, but he actually knew, and he doesn't even care. And he starts to kind of like hint to her that there was a reason that her and Jesse didn't work out, and that Ellie kind of plays into that. Now that's something that you also see in the game, but again, like there's this relationship and there's a really strong connection that's developing between Jesse and Ellie. And as somebody who played the game and saw that as well, it's something that I really like to see in the show because I think it really helps people develop an understanding towards the characters as the story unfolds in season 2. There's also another scene that I really liked that wasn't really covered in the game, and that is when Jesse and Ellie are outside, and Ellie's like, I'm gonna ride with Joel today. Like, I don't want to ride with you. I'm gonna ride with Joel. And he's like, well, I thought you guys were fighting. I thought you guys weren't friends. And Ellie goes like, Joel and me have our problems, but at the end of the day, he's family. And so even though we don't get along, I'll always kind of love him. And that like father-daughter relationship, Ellie doesn't really get to speak to as much in the game, I would say. Like, it's a lot more subtle. And they start to unfold that, I think, in a deeper way as the game progresses, versus here they kind of confront it head on. I really actually liked that scene because I think, again, it just shows this idea of like, Ellie wants to reconcile things with Joel. She just doesn't know where to start. Things are too complicated, and there's things that she can't forgive him for, but she still loves him for all he's done for her, and he's still her dad, like, in her eyes. So that was a scene that I did really like. It ties into a different trajectory, and that's Jesse's like, oh, Joel's not here because he left with Dina, and that's immediately when like bells went off in my head, and I was like, what the fuck? Why Dina? And I think that's where like some of the frustration started to peak in this episode. So it starts kind of tying the story as like, Tommy isn't out with Joel, and in the game he is. Tommy is the one who goes and I don't know, not hunts the grounds, but like he goes and investigates the perimeter with Joel. And in the game, I think I really liked that part, because there's something about Tommy being a witness to what happens in the story that I find odd as to why Dina was. But in the episode, Tommy stays. And the whole concept is that there is this flood of clickers that they don't know where they're coming from, but they're insulating themselves under dead clickers until it becomes warm enough for them to wake up. There's almost like a hidden large group of clickers that could possibly put people at risk. So Tommy's staying behind to share that because he's the mayor of the town, or like whatever. He's like the head of the council. Again, this doesn't happen in the game. And in my personal opinion, and we'll start to break it down more, I felt like it almost took away from the most important part of the episode. Because I felt like they were trying to make it something bigger than it was. And again, I don't really know where the storyline's going with it. And there were some cool aspects to it, but in terms of the story, it felt a little unnecessary. And I felt like it almost kind of stomped on the whole point of the episode. I wish Tommy would have been with his brother, but Joel goes with Dina in the episode. One of my favorite parts of this episode that they kept, which I'm really happy about, is when Abby is running from a horde of zombies. So this is something that does actually happen. She like, I don't know, catches the attention of all these zombies, and she gets stuck behind this fenced-in area, and the fence starts to fall on top of her. So she's crawling while basically almost being crushed by all these clickers. And there's this sense of like serious like fear and intensity. And when I was watching the episode for the first time, I actually remember feeling my heart rate increase, because I was and I knew what was going to happen. And I was still stressed out. I was still like anticipating the next thing. I think this was done really well. I think they went about the transitions that you play in the game really well within the episode. So this is a nod that I think they did really well in the episode. And Abby's like whole journey before she meets up with Joel was really orchestrated really well. So this, I feel half and half about this, because this scene was badass. This scene was so cool. The idea of like a swarm of clickers coming up against the fence and them using barrels of gas to like deflect them, and they lit them on fire, and Tommy uses a flamethrower on the zombies, and he uses on a bloater, and you see them crawling out of the snow. Like, it it was so well orchestrated, and I think it was a really, really cool scene, but it was almost too cool. It was almost too much that I felt it took away from the whole point of the episode, which is to it's to jumpstart Ellie's story. I feel like it was distracting. It took you away, and it was almost like it was at odds with the story of what was going on with Joel as this was going down. And the fact that like you're watching Tommy and he's in this town and he's like I was like, are they gonna kill Tommy early on? Like there were certain scenes where, because none of this happens, there were certain scenes where like Tommy almost catches an opportunity to be attacked by a clicker, and like he goes head to head with the bloater and like almost dies, but it's just luck is on his side. And I was like, are they going to kill off this character in a way that I haven't anticipated, and like why? So I don't know if the point of it was to provide new content for the game watchers, or if there was a hidden agenda is the wrong way to say it, but like there's a hidden storyline that the producers want to finalize in the story that we haven't seen yet. But it feels like there was things that were being inserted into the episode that almost felt a little unnecessary. Like I feel like they could have gone about it. Like my question was, why were you rewriting the story when the story already exists and is already like, it exists for a reason, and people reflect back on that storyline? So there was moments where I was like, cool, I'm really happy I'm seeing this, and this is a really cool scene. And then there were other times where I was like, but why? You know, why it wasn't Tommy with Joel? Why was it Dina? Why is there this swarm of zombies? Because the zombies, they go and attack the town and then they redirect back to Abby's place. And it's almost like, what was the point? So, because they don't defeat the clickers. So it felt a little disorganized, I think is the way I could put that. But the scene itself nods to the people who acted in it. The way that they orchestrated this, I think, is so cool. Having people on the roof while like fighting the clickers down below, and then having like, you see people like afraid and running away because they don't want to stick around, and they like the bloater like runs through one of the walls and like knocks it down. It's like there were some really, really cool things. It felt weird to me that Dina was with Joel, and I don't necessarily see the reason, other than the fact that it has to be that they're trying to show a reason, is because in the game Dina didn't have a reason to go and act on behalf of Joel. She was acting on behalf of Ellie for the remainder of the story. When they go to Seattle, she's doing that for Ellie. She's not doing that for Joel. I can see them wanting to create this scenario because they want Dina to have some skin in the game. But then it makes me question this idea of Dina's whole character in the game is she's a moral compass for Ellie. She's there to show Ellie when she's gone too far. She's there to draw lines in the sand of how far will you take your morality to how far will you take your revenge to fulfill what you want. You know, when are you too far gone? When have you tried to gain everything back and in turn you actually end up losing everything? So if Dina has this attachment that she didn't in the game, it makes me question if her telling Ellie to stop, which it has to eventually happen if they want to continue with the story of the game. I wonder if it's going to seem weird, especially if Dina's the one who's like, yeah, we should do this. Because Dina only did it for Ellie. Of course she did it for, you know, yeah, we got to go and like, we got to do this for Joel, but it was for Ellie. It was her love for Ellie that she was willing to do it. So I'm curious to see how that will unfold. They put Dina out. They knocked her out with an injection, which also doesn't happen in the story. Tommy gets hit in the head and he gets knocked unconscious. Now, of course, you can't really do that to Dina. And also, like, she's a young woman. I can see it being considered really distasteful if they did that in the show. So they gave her an injection, but again, it feels unnecessary, and it's like, I don't know, because then she didn't witness any of it, which is what happened to Tommy. And I can understand why Tommy would feel that way, because it's his brother and he should have seen it coming. I don't know. It just felt unnecessary. I don't understand why they didn't keep the original. But we don't know where the story's going to go. It just felt there was something about, in my heart, the idea of Tommy being with Joel in his last few moments that I feel like I was kind of robbed from. Because Tommy wasn't there. He was in the town. So I don't know. It feels like they're changing storylines to get a different reaction, but you're ultimately going to the same place. So I don't necessarily understand the point. And again, I'm trying to keep this as objective as I can as somebody who's played the game and somebody who is watching the show, because I understand that not everything that is written in this show is for the game watcher. It's for the people who are watching the show for the first time as well and learning the story for the first time. And I can respect and understand that. And I will say, like, my husband's reaction, I was watching the show, and the first time I watched this episode, my husband was right next to me. We were watching it together, and his response was different than my response, but it also wasn't. So it's helpful to see it through his eyes, because it helps me understand what somebody who is watching it for the first time is experiencing. But I felt a little shortchanged. Now, there was a bit of controversy behind this scene, and there was a few reasons for it. Now, a lot of people are making the same statements as to how they felt about Bella with Ellie in the first season, that they felt that there was a strange casting for Ellie's character. I think Bella did and is continuing to do a very good job of the character, and so I'm committed to that being the role. I don't expect anything different at this point, because it's like, this is the Ellie I know in the show. I was pleasantly surprised by Abby. In the first episode, I think that, and I can't remember this actress's name. I said it last week and I forgot, but I think she did a really good job at highlighting Abby's angst and her frustration and her anger. So I don't necessarily know if there was a better fit for her personality. Now, physicality wise, we all kind of knew that Abby wasn't gonna have the same kind of oomph behind her, because this actress is very petite. She is very slender. Abby is a buff queen, and we are here for the biceps. So there's a little bit of a difference. And so certain intimidation scenes feel a little different because I think of the physicality. So you're watching Abby interact with Joel, and there was a few things I liked about this scene. There was a few things I didn't like. The first things that I did like was that Abby had an opportunity to explain to Joel her why, which in the game, it's fast. She knocks Joel down, which they still brought in the shotgun to the knee, which was a huge scene in the game. For me, that was like shocking, because then you very quickly understand that the stakes are up, that Joel can't walk away from this. But then in the game, Abby kind of just like gets to it. She doesn't really waste time. Here, and Joel doesn't seem apologetic in the game, like at all. Here, Abby and Joel have a moment where you can see them being human. Abby explains to him why she's doing what she's doing before she does it. And Joel understands. And you can see him feeling sad about it, but you can also see him come to terms with his decision, which he does in the first episode too, where he says that I did this to save Ellie. And so my regret is it doesn't matter, because I got the result that I wanted. I got the thing I fought for. Whereas Abby, everything's unresolved. She's looking for closure. She's looking to find a way to come to terms with the fact that her dad was murdered by Joel. And she's choosing revenge. So there's a moment of two humans being human, and then they go back to being savages, I would say. They introduced the golf clubs back into the episode, which I wasn't entirely sure if they were going to do that, and they did. But Abby being so small in this episode took the intimidation away. There's something about watching Abby in the game, swinging the golf club. She's got her tank top on. You can see her arms. You can see her physicality. There's something really intimidating about Abby that doesn't exist in this episode. And it makes you feel a little weird, I think, as somebody who's watching it for the first time, because it felt like something didn't fit. There is something that I did really like about this scene, and that is Joel tells her to get on with it, which is something that happens in the game. And she says to him, "You stupid old man, you don't get to rush this." And that scene was done really well. There was a certain amount of vulnerability that the actress brought to Abby's character in this scene, which I can see people feeling split about. I can see people enjoying it because they can see, again, Abby being human, which in the early stages of the video game, you don't see that. You see Abby as this rigid, you see her as the monster, you see her as the enemy. And there's something about the game that teaches you that there's no one side to any person, that every person has the capability to be a monster and every person has the capability to be a human. They introduced Abby as being a multi-dimensional character early on. And I can see enjoying that, but I can also see, as somebody who's played the game, I almost wished that they would have waited, because then we can grow to not appreciate Abby, because I don't know if I ever got to a place where I appreciated Abby, but I saw her for who she was. And in the beginning, I saw her as a monster. I saw her as the enemy. I'm curious if they did that because people would have rioted if they didn't show some kind of emotional reaction to Abby interacting with Joel, because Pedro Pascal was the character behind that. And people who were watching this episode for the first time and never played the game, they were devastated. I kept seeing videos pop up on my social feed of like people being like, "Why did nobody warn me? I can't, like, I guess I'm just not watching the rest of the show. Like, Pedro Pascal was the only thing that kept me going," like all this kind of stuff. So it made its impact the same way it made an impact for people who were playing the game for the first time. So I wonder if they did that because they wanted to alleviate some of the pressure off of maybe this actress, off the character. I can see, like, you don't want to hate a character so much that it completely ruins somebody's experience, like I would say King Joffrey did for Game of Thrones. Like, that actor had a lot of hate come his way because he played that vicious, horrible character so well. But then on the other side, maybe they did it because they don't have a lot of time to spare, and they only have 7-8 episodes in this show. And so it's not like we don't have time to sit down and get to know Abby and see her soft spots when we get back to Seattle. And so maybe they felt like we need to show it when we can, because we don't know when the next opportunity is going to be, because we have less time than in the game. So I think there's a series of reasons why they had to do this. And I feel 50-50 about it, because I can't say that I liked it, but I also liked it. It was weird. Like, I wanted the video game experience, and I didn't get that. But at the same time, I can respect the decisions that they made. So now this is the trigger warning slide, because this was a really, really rough scene. And I played the game and sobbed when I played this game, because Ashley Johnson did a phenomenal, say for the people in the back again, phenomenal job at playing Ellie in the video game. When Ellie gets pinned down and she sees what's happening to Joel, there's a visceral, physical, like guttural pain that starts to like come out of Ellie, and that's in the game. They did the same thing in this show. They pin Ellie down. Ellie is face to face with Joel after he's been beaten, and he is deformed and he is close to death. And Ellie says to him, "Get up." There is a moment in the episode that I really liked that I don't think they showed in the game. And that is, she's looking at Joel, tells him to get up, and he actually tries to get up. You can see it. He tries to take his weight up so that he can keep going. And there was almost this moment of him, the reason he would have kept going was for Ellie. and then Abby finishes it. She did it in a different way than in the game. In the game, she hits him hard with a golf club. She doesn't do that in the episode. She uses a broken piece of a golf club, and she finishes him straight in his artery in his neck. I don't know why they chose to do that, other than the only reason I could believe that they did that is because Abby's stature was so small. They had to make it look final. And there was no way that a passable hit from her stature would be received as a final blow. Whereas getting stabbed in the neck is something that it's final. He's done. So I believe that's why they did it. I will say there was something more palpable about Abby hitting him than her stabbing him. But ultimately, it defeats the point because you're not looking at Joel, you're looking at Ellie through this entire experience. I watched this episode and I was sobbing. I was brought back immediately to where I was when I played the game for the first time, and that is you feel shock and your heart breaks, and you see this moment where Ellie, everything she was feeling, all this regret she had towards Joel, all this anger, all this love she had, it all comes together. And Bella Ramsey did an amazing job. I don't care who you are, I don't care how you feel about Bella Ramsey as a character for Ellie, this performance she did was amazing. She brought me right back there. You can see it on her. It's real terror. And that's what you need for this scene, which is, it's heartbreaking. It is, but that's what you need. They brought something more into the scene. So in the game, the Fireflies, they knock Ellie unconscious, and then she wakes up to Dina and Jesse finding her and Tommy. And then across from her, she sees Joel. This time around, they kick Ellie. She's wheezing, but she's still conscious. They leave, and then Ellie crawls towards Joel and tries to wake him up, realizes he's not alive anymore, and she basically falls asleep next to him. And again, there's almost like a disconnect, because as somebody who who played the game, there was something about the scene of Ellie being kicked unconscious and then waking up and seeing Joel and realizing that it was not a dream that I wish they would have included in the episode. There was something about that final no that she gives in the game that makes your heart break, because there's like this, I think the game did an incredibly good job at dealing with grief too. And you're in an apocalypse, so it's a little bit more escalated, but this idea that when you lose a person and you wake up and things are still surreal and so you believe that nothing's changed, they show that in like 5 seconds in the game, and they don't show that here, and I wish they did. I don't see the point of Ellie's character crawling over and confirming Joel when there could have been a different moment where time passed. She wakes up, Dina wakes her up because Dina's been knocked unconscious for an hour. She wakes up an hour later, and then she sees Joel. I wish they would have done it, and they didn't. And it doesn't ruin the experience, but it definitely, I think it removes a little je ne sais quoi, But this scene, tears, my heart was beating. My husband was next to me. He was devastated. He mouth open, jaw dropped, shock everywhere. He was, that sounded dirty, but it wasn't, I promise. It's just crazy how I said that. Anyways, he was so surprised. And so to see that his experience was the same as how my experience was when I first played this game shows me that the things that I'm nitpicking maybe aren't such a big deal. But again, you're bringing, I don't think this episode in particular is ever going to be enough for people who played the game. Because unless it was a shot for shot, which we know that the producers don't do that, they didn't do that in the first season either, you're not going to feel the same sense of gratification that I think we were looking for when it came to the first experience we ever had playing The Last of Us Part 2, especially in this scene. So, we watched these guys walk off into the sunset, into the into the snowstorm. We don't see that in the game. They become like an anomaly. They become like a secondary character until we reconnect with the group. But again, they show that every person in this group has now taken on the weight of taking a life, of watching Abby take a life. And I think this little moment will allow us to get to know the characters better, especially when we have such a small window to get to know them. Because each of these characters you kind of get to know while you hunt them down in Seattle as Ellie. And I don't think we're going to get the opportunity to see that in the show because there's not going to be enough time. So I liked this, and I think it provides a little bit of insight. But again, something different that they introduced. You literally see them leave and then walk off into the snowstorm. And I was like, that is like, they just like left their mess and were like, all right, clean it up. GG's, like, we're out. And I was like, interesting. I just thought it was interesting. But you can see on everyone's face that they're going through different experiences. These three look like, oh, what have we done? You can see Owen is a little bit more, he's almost bearing the weight just a little bit better. And Abby is looking forward. And I think she's looking the same way she did when she was burying her dad and she was looking the other way. So again, maybe they did that on purpose. Maybe I'm reading into it, but I found that to be very interesting. And yeah, I just wanted to show the difference. So, you know, for people who maybe didn't play the game, like you can see Abby is dominating. She's mad. You can see it. There's a sense of aggression in her behavior here. And here it almost feels like she's more vulnerable and sad. Like she's heartbroken here, whereas here she's just sees straight anger. And I feel like that is the separation of the Abbies that video game players and episode watchers maybe saw. So just thought it was interesting to nod. And you know, again, I'm not here to shit on the character because I think the actress who plays Abby, I think she's doing a great job. But like, you all know what we wanted. We wanted it. We didn't really get it. It's okay. We'll move on from it. But like, just even a little bicep, you know, just a little bit. She's like full fucking CrossFit in the game, and we haven't gotten any of that yet. So we'll see. I'm an optimist at heart, and I can respect the choices that they're making even if I don't agree with them. Last photo. This is blurry because this is literally the only photo I could find of it, and I had to cut this part out because, like, I guess I'll throw up now. What the fuck was this scene, guys? Like, and I'm not mad about it. I'm more like, how, like, you guys stabbed us in the heart and now you're just twisting the knife? Like, seriously? So for anybody who doesn't know, this is the final scene of the episode. This is Jesse. Ellie is on this horse as well, I believe. Dina's on this horse, and there was a rope attached to this horse dragging a body with a sheet. And very clearly you realize that that's Joel. And it was like, guess I'll die now. Thank you so much. They don't do that in the game. Like, once you see Joel and Ellie comes to the realization that it's over, then that's it. Then that's it. Then only you see Joel in the past. And the producers were like, not bad. just one more punch to the gut. Just one more. What's another? Guess I'll die now. Thank you so much. My heart couldn't break further, and it did. Actress could have put in more effort to put on 10. Yeah, and see, this is why I wonder, like, was the choice to go with a similar size to Bella Ramsey because Ellie and Abby are enemies. So they have to meet each other's level of aggression. Ellie in the game doesn't have the size to back it up, but she does have the behavior, and that's what makes Ellie so fearful. Abby has the size and of course the anger, but Abby's quiet. Like, she's not boisterous about how she feels, whereas Abby, she expresses her feelings. She's very visceral with her feelings. So I don't know. We'll see. Again, I am merely a watcher of this show, just like everybody else. I don't know if I could rewrite it better. Probably not. I'm not a writer. So I'm just a person who loves this game and is looking to feel the same emotions I did when I played the game. Take me back there. And honestly, this scene did. This, I don't know who wrote this in. I don't know who got permission to do this, but like, first of all, how dare you? How dare you hurt me? What the hell? And also, thank you so much, because that's exactly how I felt when I played the game. So like, you know, you get half and half. I'm up and down with this one. Yeah, I mean, now the story's in place. Now it's a matter of how is Ellie gonna deal with this? This is no longer Joel's story, and it never really was in season 2. This is Ellie's story, and so I hope, the best thing I can hope for in watching the next episodes is that they show the thing that was the biggest thing that left players questioning after they played the game. This left me like harping on this for weeks after I played the game, and that is, how do you justify your actions when you've taken them too far? And just because somebody looks like the villain to you on one side doesn't mean that they're villain on the other side. And there was a sense of morality and this gray area of Abby, of Ellie, where you literally like went back and forth on who was right and who was wrong, and who, you know, was Joel right for you know, killing Abby's father? Probably not, but he did it for Ellie. So there's just this like it's literally generational trauma, and how these two daughters go about healing and recovering from it if they can. And I hope that they do that story justice, regardless of how they get there. I would like certain things, but regardless of how they get there, I hope that they're leaving watchers who are seeing this show for the first time with the same question that we all had when we played the game, and that is, who was right? And how do you justify your own personal feelings in the matter? What would you do? What would be justified in your eyes? And it's a question of morality, and the game did a phenomenal job at it, and so I hope the show does it too. Yeah, episode 2 was a doozy, so let's just all take a lie down for a week, maybe call some people you love, and we'll recoup on Sunday, and hopefully we'll be better for it. That's it. That's all I have to say. I haven't watched any of the show. I'm happy they pulled the trigger right away. I don't like the humanization I'm hearing about through reviews. People in the game are cold because they've grown up in extreme circumstances. Yeah, you're right, Ray. Add on the losses Joel has endured to be even more bitter and cold. I also have the unpopular opinion that it's more Abby's story than Ellie's. It's true. Honestly, in the show, it feels like that. It feels a bit like Abby's story, and Ellie's just a secondary character. And that's not the case. If anything, this is Ellie's story. And then she meets Abby while Abby is experiencing her story. And their stories overlap. And then they now become each other's, well, not even. You know what it is? Ellie is experiencing her story, and then Abby shows up and cuts into her story because Abby's experiencing her own story. Then Abby forgets about Ellie. That's the craziest thing. And I don't know if they're going to show that in the next few episodes, but Abby continues living her life. She's now made a decision to move on from it. And it's Ellie who goes, I will not let you move on from this. So, I don't know. There's still a lot of opportunity to break this down further. There's still room for recovery here, but there are a lot of people who are feeling a lot of different types of ways. And that's why when I'm trying to give these reviews, I'm trying to come from the approach of not only the people who are playing the games, but people who are watching it for the first time. It's like when you read a book and then you watch a movie. The movie's never going to be as good as the book. Like that's just how it is. So you have to go in with the understanding that you can't relive the same emotions a second time around because it's not going to be as palpable as the first time. So it's difficult because I want to be objective. I want to be fair to the writers. It's a hard story to redo on a show. It's a difficult one. And honestly, they could have done it worse, and they're doing a really good job. I think they've done a lot of things very, very well.